For decades, soldiers had whispered about a nuclear weapon called Soul Edge. No one agreed on where the name had originated. Some claimed the device had been designed for a legendary Western commander during the final years of the Cold War. Others insisted it was not a single bomb at all, but an experimental weapons platform capable of defeating any military force placed against it. Intelligence officers dismissed most of the stories as barracks mythology, while mercenaries, arms dealers, and treasure hunters repeated them as fact. Presidents wanted it. Generals ordered their intelligence agencies to search for it. Private military companies spent fortunes following rumors across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. Most of them believed Soul Edge would guarantee victory to whoever possessed it. They were wrong. Soul Edge was not a divine instrument or a miracle of military science. It was a man-made engine of destruction whose history had been deliberately hidden beneath layers of classified records, false identities, and carefully manufactured legends. The weapon had begun as an experimental nuclear demolition device assembled from stolen components belonging to several governments. Over the years, engineers working for dictatorships, intelligence services, and criminal organizations had repeatedly rebuilt it. Its casing changed, its delivery systems changed, its security protocols evolved, yet the central weapon remained the same. Soul Edge had passed from one ambitious man to another, destroying nearly everyone who tried to control it. By 1996, it consisted of two interconnected nuclear firing assemblies built around a single fissile core. The arrangement gave the weapon redundancy. If one command system failed, the other could still initiate a partial detonation or release enough radiation to render a major port uninhabitable. Its last confirmed owner was a Spanish arms trafficker named Cervantes de Leon. Cervantes had once been feared throughout the Mediterranean, but he had also been predictable. He sold rifles, explosives, stolen anti-aircraft weapons, and military electronics to whichever government, militia, or criminal organization could pay. His cargo ships traveled under false flags. His crews changed names at every port. His money passed through banks in Switzerland, Cyprus, Panama, and the Caribbean. He had been a criminal, but an ordinary one. Possession of Soul Edge changed him. After seizing the weapon from a collapsing Eastern European weapons network, Cervantes withdrew to a fortified industrial compound near the port of Valencia. He surrounded himself with mercenaries, engineers, former intelligence officers, and political extremists. He began speaking less about money and more about power. He claimed that national borders were illusions and that governments existed only because men like him had not yet learned how to terrify them into submission. Within 2 years, cargo ships began disappearing along Mediterranean routes controlled by his organization. Some vessels were later found drifting without their crews. Others vanished entirely. Patrol boats belonging to several coastal governments failed to return from routine missions. Their weapons, communications equipment, and fuel reserves were absorbed into Cervantes's expanding arsenal. Sailors whispered about an unmarked freighter that appeared through the fog without warning. It displayed no national flag and answered no radio challenges. According to the few survivors, its hull was reinforced with military armor, and armed men watched from behind steel firing ports. Intelligence services began circulating photographs of Cervantes. The man in those images hardly resembled the charming smuggler who had once negotiated deals in expensive hotels. He had become gaunt and pale. His beard was untrimmed. Scars crossed his face and hands. Witnesses described his eyes as cold, bloodshot, and almost permanently sleepless. Some believed radiation exposure had damaged his mind. Others suspected that he had become addicted to the combat stimulants used by his mercenaries. Whatever the cause, Cervantes had transformed himself from an international trafficker into an unstable terrorist capable of threatening entire nations. As his engineers continued modifying Soul Edge, carefully controlled information about the weapon began appearing in intelligence reports, black market auctions, intercepted radio traffic, and anonymous messages sent to military attaches. The leaks were not accidental. Cervantes wanted the world to know that Soul Edge existed. He wanted governments to fear it. More importantly, he wanted ambitious men to come searching for it. They soon did. In Japan, Captain Haishiro Mitsurugi watched the future of warfare arrive during a military demonstration. A target vehicle stood several kilometers away on a remote training range. The missile that destroyed it had been fired from beyond visual range. Mitsurugi never saw the aircraft that launched the weapon. He heard only a distant roar before the vehicle disappeared inside a burst of fire and shattered steel. The demonstration lasted less than a minute. For Mitsurugi, it represented the end of an entire way of life. He had built his identity around physical courage, discipline, marksmanship, and close combat. He could outshoot most soldiers in his unit and defeat men twice his size during training exercises. Yet none of those abilities mattered against an opponent who could identify him electronically and kill him from miles away. The age of the individual warrior was ending. Computers, guided missiles, reconnaissance satellites, and remote sensors were taking his place. Mitsurugi refused to accept it. When he heard rumors that an unidentified nuclear device had been combined with an advanced battlefield command system, he became convinced that Soul Edge represented something greater than a bomb. He believed it could provide the strategic power necessary to defeat modern armies and make a single exceptional warrior more important than an entire mechanized force. His superiors ordered him to ignore the stories. Mitsurugi resigned instead. Taking his personal weapons, forged documents, and what money he possessed, he left Japan and entered the international black market. He traveled west through shipping ports, military surplus markets, and regions still recovering from the collapse of the Soviet Union. He told himself that he was searching for military equality. In reality, he was searching for proof that the modern world had not made men like him obsolete. Another Japanese operative pursued Soul Edge for the opposite reason. Her name was Taki. Officially, she belonged to an elite counterterrorism unit specializing in unconventional weapons, clandestine infiltration, and attacks against critical infrastructure. Her personnel file contained little more than training records, medical evaluations, and several heavily censored mission reports. She carried a portable radiation detection system codenamed Reimagined. The equipment had originally been developed to locate smuggled nuclear material passing through Japanese ports. It combined a compact detector, specialized chemical sensors, and a database of known radioactive signatures. In early 1996, Reimagined detected unusual traces on a shipment that had passed through several international ports. The material was too weak to be immediately dangerous, but its isotope profile corresponded to fragments recovered years earlier from a failed weapons transfer in Central Asia. The classified records associated with that incident contained repeated references to Soul Edge. Taki followed the shipment's history. Every answer produced another question. Cargo manifests had been falsified. Ships had changed names between ports. Freight companies existed only on paper. Several officials who had inspected the containers were dead. The trail eventually led toward the Mediterranean. Taki warned her commanders that Soul Edge had resurfaced and was being modified. She argued that the weapon could begin an international arms race if its design were sold to rogue governments or terrorist organizations. Her superiors hesitated. Japan could not openly send an operative into Europe without diplomatic coordination, and several allied intelligence services refused to share what they knew. Some governments wanted Soul Edge destroyed. Others privately hoped to recover it. Taki understood that bureaucracy would move more slowly than savantes. She left without authorization. Reimagined pointed west. She followed it. On the Korean peninsula, the rumors produced a different fear. The armistice had never ended the war between North and South Korea. Artillery remained positioned along the border. Soldiers watched one another through binoculars across fortified positions. Every political crisis carried the possibility that the fighting might begin again. South Korean intelligence intercepted reports suggesting that agents connected to North Korea had attempted to purchase information about Soul Edge. Whether the reports were genuine or planted made little difference. Seoul could not afford to ignore them. Special Forces operative Hwang Song-jiang was ordered to identify the weapon's location and prevent it from being transferred to any hostile government or terrorist organization. Hwang accepted without hesitation. He was disciplined, loyal, and deeply conscious of the danger facing his homeland. He did not believe Soul Edge would make South Korea invincible. He understood that a weapon capable of threatening the North could just as easily be detonated against Seoul. His objective was recovery if possible, destruction if necessary. He expected to travel alone. He did not expect Song Mina to follow him. Mina was the daughter of a respected martial arts instructor who had spent years attempting to restrain her reckless nature. She was talented, determined, and far more capable than her family admitted. She had grown tired of being treated as a child while soldiers only a few years older than her were trusted with the defense of the country. When she learned that Hwang had been sent overseas, she refused to remain behind. Using money taken from her family's savings and documents obtained through personal contacts, she followed his route out of South Korea. She wanted to help protect her homeland. She also wanted to prove that she belonged beside the world's most capable operatives. Hwang was furious when he discovered her. By then, sending her home was no longer simple. Too many criminal organizations knew their faces, and too many false leads carried the possibility of an ambush. Reluctantly, Hwang allowed her to remain with him. He soon discovered that Mina's confidence was not entirely misplaced. Across Europe and Asia, others entered the hunt. Chinese intelligence operative Li Long had originally been assigned to penetrate Cervantes's trafficking network and identify the location of the missing nuclear device. During the operation, the woman he loved was caught inside an explosion apparently ordered by Cervantes. Authorities found wreckage, blood, and fragments of clothing, but no identifiable body. Li Long's superiors declared her dead. He refused to accept their conclusion. The mission ceased to be an assignment. Every trafficker he interrogated and every port he entered became another step toward revenge. He no longer cared whether Soul Edge was recovered intact. He wanted Cervantes alive long enough to tell him the truth. The American mercenary known as Rock entered the search for reasons that were even older. Rock had survived one of Cervantes's attacks years earlier. He remembered fire on the water, armed men boarding a ship, and the screams of passengers trapped below deck. He had been separated from his European family as a child and eventually carried to the United States, where he grew up far from the world into which he had been born. He became enormous, powerful, and remarkably difficult to kill. Mercenary work offered him money, travel, and access to men who knew how people disappeared. When he heard that Cervantes possessed records taken from ships attacked over several decades, Rock believed those files might explain what had happened to his family. He joined the hunt seeking revenge, but also answers. In Italy, a silent figure emerged from an underground weapons vault once owned by the merchant Verci. His name was Voldo. Years earlier, illness and prolonged isolation had left Voldo blind. An injury to his throat had taken his ability to speak. He had spent most of his adult life guarding his employer's hidden collection of stolen art, weapons, currency, and military technology. Verci died, but Voldo's service did not end. Recorded instructions, coded ledgers, and years of psychological conditioning continued to direct him. Among Verci's final unfinished ambitions was the recovery of Soul Edge, which he regarded as the greatest prize in the international weapons trade. When Voldo discovered evidence that the weapon had resurfaced, he interpreted it as a final order from his dead master. He left the vault and traveled toward Spain. None of them understood that they were moving according to Cervantes's design. The traffickers' organization leaked different information to different groups. South Korean intelligence received reports implicating North Korea. Chinese operatives were given evidence suggesting European intelligence involvement. Mercenaries were promised money. Terrorists were promised political influence. Rogue officers were promised military power. The leads were convincing enough to be followed, but incomplete enough to provoke conflict. Cervantes watched the results from Valencia. Rival teams attacked one another in train stations, deserts, border crossings, and industrial districts. Governments accused one another of concealing the weapon. Criminal groups fought over shipping manifests that had been forged inside Cervantes's own compound. Every clash produced more weapons for his men to steal, more intelligence for them to exploit, and more fear for them to sell. Cervantes did not merely want to protect Soul Edge. He wanted the search itself to destabilize the world. Among all those drawn towards Spain, one young man interested him more than the others. His name was Siegfried Stauffen. Siegfried was a German private military contractor and the leader of a rogue mercenary unit called Schwarzwind. The organization consisted of former soldiers, criminals, unemployed veterans, and angry young men who had learned to treat the political confusion following German reunification as an opportunity. They stole weapons from military depots, hijacked convoys, robbed criminal organizations, and sold their services to anyone who could afford them. Siegfried was young, but violence had given him authority beyond his years. He was strong, charismatic, and desperate to be seen as a warrior rather than a common thief. Schwarzwind's members followed him because he made their crimes sound like military campaigns. Their most disastrous operation began with information about a convoy carrying weapons abandoned after a Bundeswehr training exercise. Siegfried believed the vehicles would be lightly defended. They were not. The convoy carried several discharged and reassigned veterans, including a decorated Special Forces soldier returning from an overseas deployment. His name was Friedrich Stauffen. He was Siegfried's father. The ambush took place at night on a rural road. Schwarzwind disabled the lead vehicle and opened fire before the occupants could identify themselves. Gunshots flashed between the trees. Men shouted contradictory orders through smoke and darkness. Siegfried saw an armed figure moving toward him. He fired. The man fell. Only after the fighting ended did Siegfried approach the body and recognize his father's face. For several minutes he could not move. Friedrich's weapon lay beside him. His uniform was stained with blood. One hand remained partially closed, as though he had been reaching toward his son in the final moment before the bullets struck. The truth shattered Siegfried. He had spent years resenting his father's discipline, absences, and disapproval. Yet beneath that anger, he had loved him. He had wanted Friedrich to acknowledge that he had become strong. Now the proof of Siegfried's strength lay dead at his feet. He could not accept it. By morning, he had begun changing the story. Perhaps another gunman had fired the fatal shot. Perhaps the convoy had been deliberately placed in Schwarzwind's path. Perhaps someone had manipulated both father and son. Within days, Siegfried no longer spoke as though those possibilities were theories. He spoke as though they were facts. There was another murderer. There had to be. The true killer remained somewhere beyond his reach. When Cervantes's agents learned what had happened, they sent Schwarzwind information about Soul Edge. The message claimed that the weapons command system contained intelligence gathered from military networks throughout Europe. It suggested that whoever controlled it could identify hidden enemies, uncover secret operations, and punish those responsible for almost any crime. Siegfried believed it. He convinced himself that Soul Edge could reveal the identity of his father's murderer. His men believed the weapon would make them rich. Together, Schwarzwind began moving south. In reality, Siegfried was not pursuing an enemy. He was fleeing the truth. In Athens, Sophia Alexandra knew nothing about the rival governments, mercenaries, and intelligence services converging upon Spain. She was the daughter of a baker and had expected to spend her life near her family. Her involvement began inside a Greek Orthodox church. She had entered during the afternoon, when the building was almost empty. Sunlight passed through the high windows and illuminated dust above the pews. Sophia lit a candle, crossed herself, and prayed quietly. A man approached her after she finished. He introduced himself as a Greek military weapons engineer. His identification appeared authentic. but he carried himself more like a frightened academic than a soldier. He knew Sufisha had received civilian explosives disposal training after volunteering with an organization that cleared unexploded ordnance left behind in former conflict zones. He also knew she had demonstrated unusual calm while working near unstable devices. The engineer told her about Soul Edge. Not the legends, the truth. The weapon consisted of 2 linked firing systems, each capable of initiating a nuclear event. Cervantes's engineers were attempting to combine those systems with stolen communications technology and remotely controlled detonators. If their work succeeded, the device could be transported aboard a commercial vessel and detonated inside almost any major port. The blast itself could kill thousands. The political panic that followed might kill millions. The engineer belonged to an international counterproliferation group assembled unofficially from military officers, intelligence personnel, scientists, and explosive specialists. The organization could not openly intervene because several of the governments involved were competing to capture Soul Edge rather than destroy it. They needed someone who understood explosives but was not already known to Cervantes's intelligence network. They needed Sufisha. She initially thought the request was impossible. She was not a covert operative. She had never killed anyone. She had no desire for recognition and no belief that courage made a person immune to bullets. The engineer did not promise that she would survive. He showed her photographs instead. Bodies recovered from cargo ships. Families killed during attacks on coastal villages. Burned patrol vessels drifting near shipping lanes. Then he showed her projections of what would happen if Soul Edge detonated inside a populated harbor. Sufisha accepted. She received protective equipment, forged identification, specialized tools, and detailed instructions for disabling the weapon's firing assemblies. Her suit could protect her from fragments, heat, and limited contamination, but not from a nuclear detonation. The engineer made one point clear. If the weapon entered its final countdown, she was not expected to escape. She was expected to prevent it from detonating. Sufisha left Greece and followed the trail westward. The search for Soul Edge became a hidden war. Mitsurugi fought mercenaries inside a weapons depot in Turkey after being told that Cervantes had stored one of the firing systems there. The crates contained rifles, counterfeit documents, and a transmitter broadcasting a false radioactive signal. Huang and Mina crossed Central Asia following a shipment that supposedly contained nuclear material. They discovered only conventional explosives and several terrified engineers who had been kidnapped to construct decoy devices. Li Long attacked a trafficking cell in Marseille and recovered records proving that his lover's death had been arranged by someone inside Cervantes's network. The documents did not reveal whether she had actually died. Rock raided a warehouse on the North African coast and found passenger records taken from ships attacked years earlier. Several pages had been removed before his arrival. Voldo entered an underground bunker in Italy, killed the men guarding it, and discovered that Verci's former associates had sold information about Soul Edge to 3 rival governments. At times, the hunters crossed paths. Because Cervantes had given each of them different descriptions of the enemy, they often mistook one another for his agents. Gunfights and hand-to-hand struggles erupted before either side understood what had happened. Every surviving lead pointed toward Spain. Sufisha arrived first. The coastal districts surrounding Cervantes's compound appeared deserted. Damaged cargo ships leaned against abandoned docks. Several had been burned above the waterline. Others bore holes from machine gun fire. Empty cranes stood motionless above the harbor, and loose cables struck metal towers whenever the wind rose. The streets were silent. Curtains moved behind a few apartment windows, but no civilians came outside. Cervantes's mercenaries had taken over the district months earlier. Those who resisted had disappeared. The remaining residents stayed indoors after sunset and avoided looking toward the compound. Sufisha entered through a drainage system identified on an old industrial map. The tunnel carried her beneath the outer perimeter and into a storage building filled with fuel drums, ammunition crates, and stolen military equipment. She moved slowly, using a suppressed pistol only when she could not avoid confrontation. Her objective was not Cervantes. It was Soul Edge. Cervantes was waiting for her. He had known someone from the Counter-Proliferation Task Force would eventually arrive. Motion detectors followed Sufisha through the compound. Hidden cameras watched her pass between warehouses. Cervantes allowed her to continue because he wanted to see who had been sent against him. When Sufisha entered the main facility, steel doors closed behind her. Floodlights came on. Cervantes stepped onto an elevated walkway overlooking the chamber. He no longer resembled the man from the intelligence photographs. His clothing hung loosely from his body. Scars and chemical burns covered the side of his face. Black body armor protected his chest, shoulders, and thighs. A compact submachine gun hung from one hand, while a heavy semi-automatic pistol rested in the other. He smiled when he saw Sufisha's equipment. Governments had sent commandos. Intelligence agencies had sent assassins. Mercenary companies had sent entire teams. Now, he said, they had sent a baker's daughter. Sufisha told him she had not come to arrest him. Cervantes asked whether she intended to carry Soul Edge out by herself. "I came to dismantle it," she answered. His smile vanished. The first shot struck the floor around her. Sufisha threw herself behind a steel workbench as Cervantes fired from the walkway. Hidden gunmen opened fire through slits in the surrounding walls. Sirens echoed through the facility, and mechanical locks sealed the outer exits. She moved through the compound using smoke, protective barriers, and the industrial machinery itself as cover. Her armor stopped fragments but could not protect her from sustained gunfire. Several rounds struck close enough to knock her down. Cervantes changed positions constantly. He fired from stairways, control rooms, and overhead platforms. His movements were fast and aggressive, shaped by years of gunfights and prolonged stimulant use. Sufisha survived because she did not fight according to his expectations. She did not pursue him. She destroyed electrical panels, jammed doors, and disabled the cameras guiding his mercenaries. She used small explosive charges to collapse firing positions and cut through the barriers separating her from Soul Edge. At last, she reached the containment chamber. The weapon rested inside a reinforced frame surrounded by cooling equipment, batteries, communications hardware, and improvised shielding. Its twin firing assemblies extended from opposite sides of the central core. Thick cables joined them to a command console. The design was more unstable than the engineer had predicted. Cervantes's modifications had turned a dangerous weapon into a mechanical contradiction. Several systems were not meant to operate together. Damaged cooling pipes leaked vapor into the chamber. Warning lights flashed across the console. Sufisha opened her equipment case and began working. The first firing assembly resisted every attempt to isolate it. Cervantes's engineers had installed redundant circuits, pressure triggers, and tamper alarms. Cutting the wrong cable could initiate the detonation sequence. Gunfire struck the containment frame. Cervantes had entered the chamber. Sufisha continued working. He shouted that she did not understand what lay before her. Soul Edge could force governments to negotiate. It could erase borders, destroy armies, and make its owner greater than any president or king. Sufisha answered without looking at him. "It is only a bomb." She severed the final connection. For 1 second nothing happened. Then half of the firing system failed. A bank of capacitors discharged through the containment frame. The resulting explosion filled the chamber with white light and hurled Sufisha across the floor. Metal fragments tore through her suit. One struck her abdomen. Another cut deeply into her leg. The weapon did not detonate. One firing assembly was dead. The remaining system stayed active, but the blast had damaged its guidance equipment, cooling mechanisms, and external defenses. Cervantes staggered as though the explosion had struck his own body. His entire plan depended upon the weapon's twin systems. One was meant to control the bomb. The other provided redundancy, remote access, and leverage over his mercenaries. With half of Soul Edge destroyed, he had lost both his strategic advantage and his planned escape route. Sufisha tried to reach her pistol. Her hand would not close around it. Cervantes raised his own weapon. Before he could fire, the chamber lights went out. A suppressed shot struck the railing beside his head. Taki emerged through the smoke. Rekimaru had guided her across the compound. The radiation signature became stronger after Sufisha's sabotage, leading her directly to the containment chamber. She saw the wounded Greek specialist, the destroyed firing system, and the surviving half of Soul Edge. She understood immediately. Sufisha had accomplished what every other operative had failed to do. She had wounded the weapon itself. Cervantes opened fire. Taki moved behind the containment machinery and returned controlled bursts. Unlike Sufisha, she had been trained specifically to hunt armed terrorists through confined spaces. She recognized Cervantes' tactics and forced him away from the positions he had prepared. The fight became a brutal exchange at close range. Cervantes fired wildly, striking pipes, consoles, and the surrounding machinery. Steam filled the room. Electrical cables fell from the ceiling. Each malfunction further damaged the targeting system connected to Soul Edge. His panic made him faster but less disciplined. Taki waited for the mistake. When Cervantes stepped into the open, she shot him twice in the chest and once through the shoulder. He fell beside the surviving firing assembly. Taki approached carefully. His body did not move. She turned to Sufisha. The Greek specialist had lost a dangerous amount of blood. Taki sealed the worst injuries and administered emergency medication. Before leaving, she removed a damaged control component from the destroyed firing system and placed it inside a shielded evidence container. The component might reveal how Cervantes' engineers had constructed the weapon. It might also help governments prevent another Soul Edge from being built. Taki lifted Sufisha and carried her toward the emergency exit. Neither woman saw the convoy approaching the compound. Siegfried arrived minutes later. Most of Schwarzwind had been killed, arrested, or scattered during the journey across Europe. The remaining men had abandoned him after realizing that the promised fortune might never have existed. Siegfried continued alone. He entered the compound through a breach created during Sufisha's attack. Smoke filled the corridors. Dead mercenaries lay near shattered security stations. Fire alarms sounded through the building, though several sections had already lost power. He followed the sound of machinery into the containment chamber. Cervantes lay beside Soul Edge. One hand rested against the scorched casing. Siegfried stepped closer. The surviving command module emitted a low mechanical vibration as its cooling pumps struggled to function. Warning messages flashed across damaged monitors. A black camera lens mounted above the control console turned slowly toward him. The movement should have frightened him. Instead, it filled him with hope. He had crossed half the continent for this moment. The machine before him contained classified military files, surveillance records, intercepted communications, and the power to destroy entire cities. Somewhere inside it, he believed, was the name of the man who had killed his father. Siegfried reached toward the console. Cervantes moved. Emergency generators surged to life beneath the floor. A ruptured fuel line ignited, sending flames across the chamber. Cervantes rolled onto his side and seized his pistol. Taki's bullets had not killed him. His body armor had absorbed most of the impacts. Blood loss and shock had rendered him unconscious, but the stimulants in his bloodstream forced his heart to continue. His eyes opened through smoke and flame. Cervantes had studied Siegfried long before the young mercenary reached Spain. He knew about Schwarzwind. He knew about Frederick's death. He knew that Siegfried had replaced guilt with an imaginary conspiracy. Now Cervantes intended to test him. If Siegfried died, he was unworthy of Soul Edge. If he survived, he might become the heir Cervantes needed. Siegfried raised his heavy battle rifle, Faust. The gunfight began before either man spoke. Cervantes fired from the floor and rolled behind the containment frame. Siegfried's rifle rounds tore through consoles and steel supports. Sparks filled the air. Flames spread across spilled fuel and climbed Cervantes's clothing. He did not appear to feel them. The surviving Soul Edge command system identified Siegfried's position through motion sensors and displayed targeting information on a damaged monitor facing Cervantes. Guided by the system, Cervantes fired through smoke and forced Siegfried behind a support column. Siegfried's rifle was powerful but cumbersome inside the confined chamber. Cervantes moved faster. He advanced through the flames, firing his pistol until the slide locked open. Then he struck Siegfried with a weapon and attempted to seize Faust. The two men struggled over the rifle. Siegfried saw Cervantes's burned face inches from his own. The trafficker's expression no longer contained strategy or reason. Only obsession remained. A damaged cable fell across Faust. Electricity surged through the rifle's metal frame. The weapon discharged into the ceiling and exploded between them. Both men were thrown apart. Siegfried's hands were burned. Cervantes's body armor had partially melted against his chest. Yet he continued crawling toward Soul Edge. Siegfried found a discarded pistol beneath a shattered workstation. Cervantes reached the command console. Siegfried fired. The first bullet struck Cervantes in the back. The second entered beneath his damaged armor. The third passed through his neck. Cervantes collapsed against the base of the weapon. Fire consumed what remained of his clothing. This time he did not rise. Siegfried stood over him, breathing through smoke. Faust had been destroyed. His men were gone. His father was dead. Before him remained the only thing he believed could give those losses meaning: Soul Edge. The surviving command system had been designed to manipulate anyone attempting to operate it. Cervantes had understood that weapons were controlled not only through locks and passwords, but through human weakness. His engineers had compiled psychological profiles of military officers, politicians, mercenaries, and terrorists who might one day attempt to seize the device. The system searched public records, intercepted communications, and files stolen from intelligence agencies. It identified fear, ambition, shame, resentment, and grief. It then displayed information designed to encourage those emotions. When Siegfried touched the console, the system recognized him. His name appeared on the monitor. So did his father's. Files opened across the damaged screens. Bundeswehr deployment records, photographs of Frederick, intercepted messages from Schwarzwind, and heavily edited recordings of the convoy ambush. The evidence had been altered. Angles were changed. Time stamps were removed. Unidentified figures were highlighted in the darkness. Messages suggested that another organization had deliberately arranged the confrontation. Soul Edge did not speak with a living voice. It spoke through documents, recordings, maps, and carefully constructed lies. It offered Siegfried power. It offered him vengeance. Most importantly, it told him that he was innocent. The screen suggested that Frederick's death had been planned by a hidden network of officers, intelligence agents, and political leaders. The true murderer remained alive. Soul Edge's surveillance systems could locate him. Its weapons could punish him. Siegfried stared at the images. Part of him understood that the evidence was false. That part was overwhelmed by the desperate young man who had knelt beside his father's body and begged for another explanation. He entered the activation sequence. Soul Edge awakened. Backup generators sent power through the damaged compound. Communication towers rose from concealed positions along the coast. Emergency transmitters seized military and commercial frequencies. Satellite uplinks began broadcasting encrypted packages prepared by Cervantes. Outside, fuel stores ignited beneath the primary antenna array. A column of white flame erupted into the night sky. At the same moment, Soul Edge released thousands of files into military, intelligence, and criminal networks around the world. The system exploited the communications technology of 1996. Satellite relays, military radio channels, fax networks, early internet connections, diplomatic cables, and private bulletin board systems used by arms traffickers and extremist groups. Governments received false warnings that rival nations had obtained portable nuclear weapons. Military commands were sent fabricated mobilization orders. Terrorist cells received lists of targets, weapons caches, and coded instructions. Mercenaries were promised fortunes for traveling to Spain. Unstable individuals were shown messages suggesting that Soul Edge could fulfill their deepest ambitions. South Korean officials received reports of an imminent attack from the north. North Korean commanders received evidence of South Korean nuclear preparations. European governments were warned that unidentified ships carrying radioactive material were entering their ports. Russian officers were shown documents claiming that NATO forces had stolen weapons from unsecured depots. None of the information was entirely believable. Enough of it was plausible. Armies mobilized. Aircraft were placed on alert. Ships changed course. Police raided suspected terrorist safe houses. Criminal organizations began killing one another over the locations of non-existent weapons caches. Across the world, men who had never heard the name Soul Edge before that night became convinced that possessing it could change history. The resulting crisis became known as the Evil Seed Incident. Its name came from an intelligence analyst who compared the transmission to a poisonous seed scattered across dozens of countries. Every false report produced fear. Every frightened government created another reaction. Every reaction appeared to confirm the original lie. At the center of it all stood Siegfried Stauffen. He believed he had found the weapon that would free him from his suffering. In truth, he had inherited Cervantes's organization and surrendered himself to its ideology. The transformation did not happen in a single night. Siegfried initially believed he remained in control. He ordered the surviving mercenaries to return to the compound. Some obeyed because Cervantes's automated messages recognized Siegfried as the new commander. Others came because they believed Soul Edge would make them rich. Siegfried took Cervantes's black body armor and altered it to fit his own body. His right arm had been badly injured during the final gunfight, so the compound's engineers constructed a heavy mechanical brace around it. The device allowed him to lift and fire weapons despite torn muscles and damaged nerves. He began using the stimulants stored in Cervantes's medical facilities. At first, the drugs helped him remain awake while studying the records surrounding his father's death. Then he needed them to command the compound. Eventually, sleep became almost impossible without sedatives. Soul Edge continued feeding him evidence. Every file led to another supposed conspirator. Every suspect led to another enemy. When information contradicted his beliefs, the system labeled it disinformation. When his own memories threatened to reveal the truth, he returned to the altered recordings of the ambush. Weeks passed. His hair turned pale from stress, chemicals, and malnutrition. His skin lost its color. The brace surrounding his injured arm became heavier as armor plating and weapon controls were added to it. The frightened young man who had searched for a way to escape his guilt gradually disappeared beneath black armor, combat drugs, and manufactured hatred. Soldiers and traffickers serving the organization stopped calling him Siegfried. They had seen him walking through the burned compound at night, surrounded by armed men and illuminated by the cold light of Soul Edge's monitors. They had watched him execute those he accused of betraying his father. They had heard him speak to enemies who existed only inside the weapons files. Among themselves, they gave him another name, Nightmare. Cervantes de Leon had been defeated. One half of Soul Edge's firing system had been destroyed. Sufisha had survived long enough to be transported to a secure medical facility, while Taki carried the recovered component into hiding. Governments continued denying that the weapon existed, even as their intelligence services searched desperately for Siegfried's location. The immediate hunt for the missing nuclear warhead had ended. Yet the surviving half of Soul Edge now belonged to someone younger, stronger, and far more tormented than Cervantes had ever been. From the ruins near Valencia, Nightmare began rebuilding the organization. The world believed the crisis was passing. In reality, the struggle to prevent global catastrophe had only begun.